Welcome to my channel.
Well, let's bring in former White House press secretary and co-host of Outnumbered, Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, I guess the White House is probably prudently staying quiet about this, not wanting to derail it. But there's a real question as to whether or not this is a viable deal at all, or whether Hamas is just trying to play a PR game and make it look like it's the Israelis who are the intransigent party.
And that's what Israel claims, and that's very likely the case. You know, very fair of the White House to say, I'm not going to get ahead of this. There are ongoing negotiations. You heard him say Director Burns at this moment is talking this out and hashing out the details. That is all fair. But the policy coming out of the administration of we don't want to see Israel go into Rafah. We think the way forward is a deal where hostages are released and there's not this procession into Rafah. That's essentially saying to America's greatest ally in the Middle East, just sit back and wait for the next October 7th, because that is what Hamas would do. We know how Hamas works. So the policy coming out of that briefing is a very, very erroneous one. However, being safe on the details of the diplomatic discussions, that is entirely fair.
Yeah.
So, Kayleigh, last week, I want to make sure I get the order of this right, just based on my recent memory. Hamas, well, we learned that another hostage died while in Hamas captivity. We don't know exactly when. Then Hamas turned down a ceasefire agreement on the table. Then over the weekend, Hamas killed 4 IDF soldiers inside a humanitarian zone. And then miraculously, with maybe an early Christmas in July gift, they announced to the world that they have agreed to the terms of a ceasefire. I mean, how could you turn that down?
Right. Right, exactly. The timeline speaks for itself. And as Israel is saying, evacuate Rafah because we are on the precipice of an invasion. And then all of a sudden they miraculously agree to this ceasefire, of which we don't even know what the terms were or are, or if there was any Israeli discussion there. But, one other thing I just want to point out as we were listening to that, and John, I'm sure you would agree with me here. I mean, where were the questions about the aid that was halted, this huge Axios report we've been talking about for more than 24 hours. And the line at the bottom is the White House has declined to comment as to why this ammunition was halted. Hopefully the reporters get there. But that's a huge outstanding question after the ceasefire. If you're not getting anywhere there, move to the next topic, because that's a big one.
Yeah, well, there's no wonder that Hamas is feeling emboldened, because you had that report over the weekend that Biden was withholding a shipment of weapons to Israel. You've got Bernie Sanders saying, oh, no, they can't go into Rafah. You've got to do everything that you possibly can to stop this. Hamas is looking at this and saying, wow, we're getting a lot of support from the United States. Why wouldn't we push Israel to adopt a ceasefire that's in our best interest but not theirs? But here's the question that's always dogged me. This White House seems to be pushing for a ceasefire deal in exchange for the hostages. And to your point, then what? Because if Hamas is left with its 4 brigades in Rafah, October 7th will happen again at some point in the future. And we're at a point now, we brought this up with Brent Sadler, where Iran has been made to look like a toothless tiger, that it can throw literally everything it's got at Israel. 99% of it gets shot down. So Israel and the U.S., it would seem to me, are in a better position than ever to demand an unconditional surrender by Hamas and then get to some sort of political solution for the way forward.
Yeah, but you need resolve in the White House. You need a very clear foreign policy doctrine, absolute resolve behind our ally Israel. But to your point, what they're asking is release the hostages, which Israel says there are about 130. They presume, Israel, that perhaps a quarter of them are not even alive anymore, which is tragic to think about. But then you leave Hamas leadership in place in the tunnels of Rafah. You leave the infrastructure in place so that all of a sudden Iran, the proxies, can flood weapons back to Hamas. So October 7th happens again. I fear what is happening here is domestic politics is entering what should be a sacrosanct realm of foreign policy. They have to appease this left flank of the Democratic Party. It's why we're hearing about Palestinian refugees. It's why there's this tepid equivocation on our support for Israel. And unfortunately, I'm only left to conclude that domestic politics is at play where it should not be.
Kayleigh, thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow on Outnumbered.
Thank you both.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.